It's not the same, is it, Steve?
Something doesn't feel right. No, I missed the witty rapport we have in the mornings that
no question
extinguishes right,
that's
when
true.
you open the door. You're going to miss that.
Oh, it was so nice. I mean, so upsetting to take that corner and not see Mike looking at his phone while I was walking down.
Usually he hears you jingle the door and the phone goes right into his pocket quickly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very, very quickly.
So let me get this straight. So Mike does this whole thing yesterday, which, again, we wish him well. I talked to you yesterday afternoon. What are you making that face for?
It feels like you're getting ready to bury him.
I don't think so. Am I? Oh, God. No, so he lays out this whole big plan he's got. Big plan. He's going to fix everything in his life. Go on this thing. Take it easy, Mike. Shut up, Mike, for a second. And then you called me yesterday. I talked to you yesterday, and you're like, Mike's freaking out. He didn't realize it would be difficult to get into this program during coronavirus and COVID-19. True or false?
Well, I have that secondhand via intern Justin.
Okay, well,
but, yeah, I'm told there was a panicky moment when he didn't realize.
So this idiot didn't even register, or sign up, or
well, he couldn't, because once he made the decision to seek treatment, the place was closed for Labor Day.
Well, I know, but you should probably know before you make your big announcement that this is going to be difficult or more. I mean, you should have
are you surprised that it happened on President's Day when he was going to his therapist as well?
That's true.
It's always a long weekend when he makes a significant life decision.
Like me, I got, it's just a big moment. I'm like, I need to get away. I need to think. I need to take a trip around the world. And then I call you that day. I'm like, I need to book tickets for this. I need to fly somewhere. I don't know. It seems very. I don't know.
I think he got it worked out.
He's all set?
Yeah. I was planning on calling him later today. I didn't want to put too much on his plate yesterday. So
okay, so you're gonna call him today?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So we wish him well, and we'll keep an eye on him as he.
Welcome back. This is the Rundown, your favorite show on the YouTube, especially when Red from Maine is not here. We don't have Red with us this week, but I hate hosting this show. I'm a terrible host, so. We were thinking of a third guy to have on. Me and Ziggy both thought Gig right away. We're gonna need Gig to carry this show because I'm gonna crumble hosting. It's been a great week on the show, kind of a roller coaster. We started off with Mike kind of making his announcement on Tuesday, which caught a lot of people by surprise. I've seen a bunch of different reactions and predictions to it, so we'll get into that. Then we'll talk about just how the show has been with two people this week, just Kirk and Steve. And then, we'll dive into some random notes, some Steve from Providence talk. But first, starting with Mike, Ziggy, you're a guy who has bold predictions. And it wasn't too long ago you predicted, my stupid ass dog, you predicted that Mike would be off the show and there would be a new voice. Now, I don't think you predicted it under these circumstances. But what are your thoughts on this whole situation? Do you think Mike will be back? How are you feeling about him making this decision to kind of step away for a minute to get his mental health right? Just give me your thoughts.
Sure. Well, first, I think we briefly need to acknowledge we are recording tonight thanks to the benevolence of Kirk Minahan. I would like to think that he removed the ban once he realized that the rundown was impacted by it and he would have to find something else to run to on his Sunday mornings. So I'm pretty sure that's his routine. Wake up early, throw on the KMS rundown, go for his nice run. I think Mike will be back. I definitely am confident in that. It was, I think, 2 weeks ago, Gig, when you were on Mike and the Minifans. He actually mentioned how he's reluctant to go to new places and kind of venture out because of his eyesight. And I was actually ready last week on the rundown to bring that up and kind of give him a pep talk about how life isn't easy. If you want to reach your goals, you got to overcome the obstacles. Kirk overcomes his mental health struggles. Steve has to wake up every day being the world's biggest douchebag. We all have to overcome stuff. And I was ready to kind of go hard on Mike. Fortunately, I did not. I forgot to bring it up because I would have, in hindsight, looked like an asshole if I did. It's clearly something that's been weighing on him for a while, which anytime someone has something that's just bringing them down, either physically or mentally, you got to feel for them. So definitely feel for Mike. And especially because it's the combination of losing the eyesight, which is something no one can really fathom, but also dealing and coping with the anger and the self-doubt that comes with that. So definitely feel for Mike. I'm confident he'll be back. I think it was good for him to come in on Tuesday, give his spiel, and hear Kirk tell him on air, go do your thing, get it straightened out, then come back and we'll keep going as we were. I think that gives him some confidence that he's not just cast aside. Kirk has the loyalty to him. So I think that was important for him to hear.
Yeah, Gig, how are you feeling about the whole thing?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, when I was on Mike and the Minifans, I asked him if him losing his eyesight was degenerative, and the way he responded then was it kind of seemed like it wasn't right. Like something was actually really bothering him at that point in time. And I don't know if it's just because I'm getting old or if I'm soft or whatever, but I mean, I think it's sad. That's something that absolutely would petrify me, is just knowing that one day it's going to be lights out. And, something that Kirk said that I found interesting is he said that he has a feeling that Mike's going to be insecure about the show moving on without him. And then he's going to rush to come back and nothing's going to be accomplished. And I really hope that's not the case. I hope he gets the help that he needs. But I mean, I think it's kind of unfathomable to live your life knowing that one day you might lose your sight completely. I mean, what would you guys do if you knew that one day it was going to be lights out? Would you live your life differently? I mean, personally, I probably wouldn't be doing the show. I'd be going around the world and getting mental images and to store away,
Yeah, I can totally see that side of it, of kind of, making sure you get the best out of it while you can. But I can also see the side of me like having to deal with that heavy of a scenario on my mind for my whole life, knowing one day I'll go blind. I could see that kind of crumbling me mentally. I as someone who's had to like step away and go into treatment, even though it was for drugs and alcohol, like there is that knee-jerk reaction for everybody who steps away to try to rush to fix things in 1 or 2 weeks and then try to rush back into things. It's like it's the most cliche thing you can do in that scenario, I think. So I think Kirk is spot on with that prediction, but I think Mike is lucky that he has Kirk and Steve. Steve has been very supportive on the show, and then Kirk obviously as well has been through his own struggles. So luckily he has a bit of experience in that. And I thought it was good to hear Kirk say like he wasn't going to let Mike just come back on the air too early. There's no need. There's really no rush. And it's easy for everyone to say that except for Mike. I've been in that position, but I think it was a good decision. Maybe something he could have done a while ago, but I guess better now late than never. So yeah, I have noticed like little differences on the show where people like to give Mike a hard time, telling him he doesn't add a lot of value to the show, but it is unquestionably a different show without him, just by the nature of there being two voices. So it's been like a weird little experiment this week, seeing how Blind Mike has handled it, how the show has reacted. It's been a wild week, definitely. We had the YouTube ban. I'm glad it's back up so we could do this show. We don't have to sell it. We were going to record anyway and sell it on the black market. I'm glad we didn't have to do that. That people can't live without the rundown. But yeah, Ziggy, have you noticed a big difference like on the show this week without Mike?
Yeah, and I think we'll get to that a little in the second segment with the kind of the Kirk and Steve show, because I definitely have some thoughts there. I do want to ask though, do either of you know what terminal lucidity is?
I'm familiar, yes.
Can you fill in the audience, please?
It's kind of like right before you die, like a moment of mental clarity, where someone like with Alzheimer's might say something profound, or it's like a right before you die moment.
Right. It's like a rally or a surge right before someone. That's kind of what happened with Mike, because the 2 weeks after coming back from Kirk's leave, Mike was like on fire. I wouldn't say it's the best he's been on the show, but it's the best he's been in a long time. And then even off the show, like the fan interaction with the Mike versus Ted Senate race, like he was really strong. And then this happens, and I think that goes to show to how much it was weighing on him, because I think Kirk and Steve were, at least Kirk was saying how he was good, or he was really good during those 2 weeks. And hopefully Mike heard him say that, but he still took the steps to kind of realize, all right, it's at the point where I need help. And again, I think it's tough because he can pass all of his blind camp courses, get the diploma, and he still has issues to deal with. Like there could be like a line in the sand that marks the end of his quote unquote training, or however you want to phrase it. But he still has to learn to live on his own and with what he's going through. So it's definitely going to be difficult for him. But pulling for Mike, to answer your original question, Gig, if I knew I was going blind, I'd probably be just my boring old self and not do anything different.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fine. I think a lot of people would probably do that. They just continue to live their life the way that they do. I mean, really, if it came down to it, I wouldn't want to know. I wouldn't want to know if it's going to be like,
that's true.
May 30th, 2023, it's going to be lights out. You know, you hear that scenario like, oh, if you knew the day you were going to die, you know, it's like, I don't want to know that shit. Okay. You can keep that shit to yourself. I think, you know, it was funny also on Mike and the Mid Fans, a couple weeks ago when I was on there, he started off, and that was really like the beginning of, I think it might've been the same day, that the beef with, Joshua happened. Either that or it was the day after. And he was hot, man. You could definitely tell, like, for the beginning of that show, for probably a solid 10 minutes, he just, you know, just didn't get in his way. Just let him go ahead and just have it. And he was really pissed off with that situation. So I found that interesting that when he came back, you know, he was like, I was irritated at the situation too much. So yeah.
I think one thing that's, not one thing, but the show on Tuesday had not many laughs, didn't cover any news stories, but what other podcast would have this on-air discussion of why one of the members is taking a leave, instead of that being like dealt with HR or behind the scenes? I think I heard some people saying like Mike probably shouldn't have been in for that. And I mean, I can only assume that Mike was given the option to not come in. Assuming that's the case, I'm glad he took the chance. I don't know, maybe he regrets it because of what happened with Steve from Providence with him calling in. But it just seemed like the whole episode was like a kind of a mini therapy session for Mike. And again, I think in that it was just good. I'm imagining for him to hear Kirk tell him like, we have your back, go do your thing, come back. We have a seat here waiting for you. And it was also nice that they did the announcement on the YouTube channel, because there's nothing worse than the podcast dropping at 11 and you can't start it till like 12 and you go on Twitter and you see something big happen.
Yeah.
Like, there are no spoilers. We're all hearing it. At least whoever watched it, like the hardcore fans, we got it as it was happening. We could react live. It made you kind of feel like you were part of the show in a way.
Yeah, I think the Minifans are way too unstable of a fan base to have something like that happen with just like a tweet like, oh, Blind Mike is stepping away, because just the conspiracy theories that would come out of that are crazy. So like you said, great to have that discussion on air. I don't know where else you're going to get anything like that. And it's real and it's raw. I know Geary's a fighter, you know, he might not be like a boxer, but he's a punching bag, which in a way is still a fighter. He can take a lot of shots. He's tough. So yeah, he'll be back, and there's no rush, and we'll be happy when he is.
I like, you know, the other thing too, like when he started to waffle and he's like, I don't know if I'm making the right decision here, and started going back and forth. Like both Kirk and Steve were like, no, you're making the right decision, you know, because really, that is probably the hardest part. And I know this is going to sound like Alcoholics Anonymous or NA or whatever, but it's like admitting that there's an issue is really like, that's the fucking first step. Like going and getting better and getting, you know, and that's what it's all about. Like Kirk said today, life's too friggin' short. With the guy that wanted to quit his job selling medical devices, life's too short, man. And if you're having issues like that, you got to go nip it in the bud, because you'll just pass you by.
Yeah, and I think I was just thinking about the whole situation. He's lucky he has like Alba. You know, if he was a single, alone guy about to lose his vision, like then I don't know, that's a serious issue. So he's lucky he's got good friends like Alba and Steve and Kirk, you know, and he'll be back.
Absolutely.
So this segment has seemed far too serious for a recap show of a comedy podcast. What was your favorite blind camp joke from that whole bit this week? I think my favorite was the toaster. The learning how to use the toaster is brought up a couple times, including Kirk making the joke on Wednesday and then a caller making the same joke on Thursday. And I think Kirk forgot that he made the joke, and Kirk like couldn't get over how funny that image was, even though he had the same like thought the day before.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think the toaster thing is going to stick. That's not going away anytime soon.
I like the I can't see you so well. I like the name of the camp. You know, I'm a big fan of that. I was you know, I'm a nerd, so I was in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, and I remember one time we were out camping and our leader, like they'd have us go hunt snipe. Now snipe don't exist, but they give you a paper bag and a cudgel, actually.
There you go.
And to go hunt snipe, and you'd be like, what do they look like? And they're like, you'll know as soon as you see one. So this is a whole, like, they just wanted to get rid of us so they could drink whiskey.
Yeah.
But in order to be able to do that, they made us like, pray to the gods of snipe, and we had to go Awa Tana Siam. Awa Tana Siam. And so you speed it up, it's what an ass I am. So there you have a bunch of adults, as we're going Awa Tana Siam, a bunch of 9-year-olds. And so I can't see us so well. It was kind of like a play on that, and I thought it was pretty funny.
I did. The guy that's called twice about the blind camp counselor was good. There was one guy there were two guys on Thursday that called, but I think it was the guy that called twice who was talking about how Mike was having trouble in the bathroom and he kept yelling, "Damn you, Minahan!" That guy, "Damn you, Minahan!"
Yeah, that was funny too.
Yeah.
And I think those are jokes that Mike can take. I do think there are a couple times where they were talking about, I think Steve was saying like, oh, it's a funny image to think about Mike like stumbling around with a cane. I think those jokes, I'm not saying they're over the line, but I think those are the ones that are going to get to Mike, because it's making fun of him. It's making fun of what he's self-conscious about, which is like bumbling, stumbling around, not being able to function, being totally blind. So it's going to be interesting to see like how that plays out going forward. I mean, we know Kirk is someone who once called his mom and told him that his grandmother died in a car accident just because. So I'm sure he will go over that line, but it'll be interesting to see how Mike reacts when that happens.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll phase. I mean, I'm sure initially Mike, I don't think he'll be sensitive of it, but I think just like the fat jokes and him fucking his mom, he seems to be pretty good about just leaning into things.
Yeah, but the fat jokes, he doesn't even think he's fat. So,
but yeah,
it's like that seems to be the real trigger for him. Rightfully so.
Well,
I mean, it's viably so.
Well, we'll see. And like, it's curious because kind of on that point, Kirk said, if Mike comes back and he's totally sensitive or thinks it's not the best show for him to be on, right, then it will change. But I don't foresee that happening anytime soon. I think Mike will be good.
What did you guys think about what Kirk said? I believe it was yesterday when he said, like, I like having a third guy essentially to, shit on, essentially to be the boob. And that's the role that Mike's playing. What did you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think he used the example of Mutt and Tangway.
And maybe Tomasi or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, right. And Tomasi. It's definitely like, it's pretty obvious if you listen to Kirk long enough, like he loves that. I was surprised he admitted it, that there's kind of like that formula there. But yeah, it's, not to get to what we'll get to the next segment. I was a little disappointed that Steve didn't fall into that role. Because I always love when he goes after Steve and when Steve's made to look like the boob. But I think Mike is good for the show because he fits that well, and he doesn't add everywhere, but he does add in the more like the riffing and the banter back and forth working off of Kirk's joke. So I think Mike is a good fit for that reason. That's why I do hope he comes back.
Yeah, well, we can hear some sound right now of the Kirk and Steve show, and then talk more about how the show has looked without Mike.
That's your story, right, Marty?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And then Big Cat asks about the China situation.
Well, Marty, real quick though, your take on just your take overall on how the Biden campaign's been doing.
Not good.
What do you mean?
Not good.
Well, can you articulate that more?
So we can't talk.
What?
You can't talk.
Who can't talk?
Biden.
Why not?
He's not a smart guy. Can't talk.
Voices. All right, good. Marty Mosher, by the way, seems like a very nice guy.
He does. Yeah,
he seemed genuinely upset that I stopped following him on Twitter. I actually feel bad about that.
Did you follow him again?
Not that bad, but I
All right, so we just heard some sound of the Kirk Minahan and Steve Robinson show, the gruesome twosome. The show never ceases to amaze me in the way that anytime there's some kind of hurdle, it's able to adapt, survive, and remain interesting and original. And, removing Mike Geary, a lot of people will say, not a big deal. But to me, just the nature of there being only two voices on the show does change things. It does change how they riff. I'm a Rob fan, diehard Rob fan. I'll admit it. I think Steve's been phenomenal this week. I think he was phenomenal last week. Ziggy, you're a Robinson hater. You got Big Steve
Not
derangement syndrome.
Not
you
true.
admitted to me. You've admitted to me Big Steve gives you headaches sometimes. He lives in your dreams. So this is like maybe your worst nightmare. Only Steve and Kirk. Tell me what you're feeling.
No, I love Steve Robinson now that I know that I'm in his head, that I own him. So I can admit he's a great producer who I stuffed in a locker last week. So we'll leave it at that. I think I said at the end of last segment that one of my favorite parts of the podcast is when Kirk makes fun of Steve for saying something dumb or for Steve doing something dumb. And I was a little afraid that the dynamic would be different enough where we wouldn't get that as much. Like when you're making fun of someone, when it's one-on-one, you don't always make the same jokes at someone's expense as if there's someone else in the room. But the very beginning of Wednesday's show, Steve was messing up audio as he is wont to do. And Kirk asked him, are you taking over Mike's role of sucking on the show? So right there, I knew I don't know why I doubted Kirk that Kirk would do that. I mean, Kirk, he thrived with Mark Moroso on Enough About Me at the end. So making fun of him. So I don't know why I doubted that. I'm sorry, Kirk. And Steve seemed a little flustered in the beginning of Wednesday because he was trying to juggle everything. But I will admit, for the rest of the week, I mean, Steve did very well. There were some parts throughout the week where Mike was noticeably absent. But like you said, VD, the show can adapt very well because it's the Kirk Minahan show. So it's as long as he's there, it's going to be a good show. I did realize though this week that Mike is kind of the laugh track for the show. So when I first listened Wednesday at the end, I was like, that wasn't a very funny show. And I re-listened, and that's when it hit me, like, you didn't have Mike's sometimes forced fake laugh after every single joke, just filling dead air. And it's like when at least for me, when The Office first came out and first watching that, it's like you're expecting a laugh track after every joke and it's not there. And it just takes a little bit to get used to it. So I think it was that same adjustment period. But Thursday, Friday the whole week was good. But it was just a little off at first because you're expecting Mike to fill in with the hmms and the laughs and the occasional joke. So he was definitely missed.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were afraid it would be heavily political. We all know Big Steve loves talking politics, but I don't think we saw too much of that this week. It was apart from Tuesday, it was a pretty light-hearted week. I don't think the haters of Big Steve who say he's just a politics guy really have a leg to stand on this week. Gig, I don't know where you stand with Big Steve, but what were you thinking about the shows this week and the fact that Mike was not there?
I've always been a extremely pro Big Steve guy because
there we go.
He's Maine brethren, and I stick by my Maine boys. But I miss Mike, but that being said, I really when there's only two people in the studio, it seems more candid and it seems more like a conversation. So it at times I feel as though it's a lot more smoother than the normal show when you add a third person in. And I could almost had more of a radio quality to me versus a podcast, if that makes any sense. Yep. And maybe that's because of Steve's background doing, the Howie Carr and the back and forth that they have, and maybe just even like the sound or the timbre of the voices and just the correspondence that they're having with each other. So although I do miss Mike, I find myself not missing him as much as you think one might miss him. Right. Because I think these guys have done great. And like you guys were saying, they're phenomenal at adapting, and the content's been hilarious. Like today with the Amish and the astronauts. Both of that shit was funny. Both of it was hilarious.
You, VD, you mentioned the politics talk. And I agree. Like I thought it would be, it's kind of the obvious joke is Steve's going to steer the show right. And go politics heavy. And there was some
that was funny.
All right, let's take the next call. It wasn't whatever. It was funny, but it didn't expand on the joke. And I think that's what Mike's really good at. I think that's probably the best thing he brings to the show other than being the punching bag or the boob. So that it's little things like that where I noticed he was missing. But like you said, Gig, it did seem like a smoother conversation. And so it was just different. Not good or not better or worse, it's just different.
I do think Mike would have probably chimed in when Steve was talking about hitting the apex when you're on a swing.
Yeah,
and weightlessness, you could see 12, 13-year-old astronaut Steve Robinson going to the local elementary school just to I'm like, hey mom, I'm gonna go check out Zero Gravity. We'll see you soon. And I could have seen Mike chiming in at that point. So you're right.
Yeah, Big Steve. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say it's when Mike's there, it's not smooth. It's more rough around the edges. But I think in that roughness, to carry the analogy, you can get the diamond of a really good segment, like on Cullinane's last day, for example, with the Steve, my good man. That was Kirk and Mike going back and forth because they're he's able to get on that level, not quite where Kirk is, but he's able to keep up with him at times, riffing.
He's good at repeating Kirk's jokes with different words. He is. He riffs well with them there. It is a skill.
It gives Kirk long enough to think of the next
joke.
It
is a skill. Yeah. No, it sounded condescending, but Red's not here, so someone has to do it.
We are being a little too nice of Mike. That's going to be the criticism.
Yeah.
KMS Rundown episodes. We're being way too nice of Mike.
Yeah. Speaking of Menners and the rating system, I wanted to get your guys' take on how you thought about this very short-lived but very controversial YouTube ban that Kirk sprung upon us midweek and then quickly repealed. I was caught off guard. I did think it would last more than a day. I'm glad it didn't because we do enjoy doing this show. I enjoy watching pretty much all the content on the YouTube. Gig, the co-star of Better Than It Used to Be. There's lots of good shows on there, and so I'm happy it's back. Did that catch you off by surprise, or how did you feel about it, Ziggy? You kind of were right on the prediction that it wasn't going to last long. Privately, you were telling me, you thought it was going to be a day or so.
No sharing of DMs. It didn't seem like Kirk was definitely mad at Steve, but he didn't have the reason to be mad at everyone else. And that's why I knew that in the goodness of his heart, I just had a feeling that Kirk would kind of ease off at least everyone else. I thought he was gonna play up the fact that he wanted to get out of Mike and the Minifans tomorrow, and then on Monday he would let everyone do their shows again. Instead, he just tweeted it last night, and then today was like, yeah, I'm just not gonna do it. We'll just have Justin.
Yeah.
It was good because I like Justin and the Minifans. But poor Quanwee Chris with the cheer show. But there's always going to be casualties.
It did seem kind of like a deliberate, in hindsight, it does seem kind of like a deliberate move so that Kirk just wouldn't have to do that. But he didn't have to do it necessarily in the first place. I think he said that on air and pretty quickly regretted it. But Gig, how did you feel about the short-lived YouTube ban?
It was real quick. I thought it was funny. Kirk goes, so who's going to do Mike and the Minifans? Justin? And they're like, yeah, Justin will do it. And he's like, all right, well, if it's horrible, I'll do it. And he goes, well, at least I'll say I'll do it. And then I'll back out. I was like, see, that's the shit I love. That little stuff. Yeah, I was excited for the band actually because Tony's been on vacation, and we could have used a week or two just to work on some new stuff for episode 7. But no, I'm glad I'm glad that it's funny because you look at the comments and people are like, there's a YouTube ban, and you have that. There's a lot of people out there like, thank God, I hate the fucking YouTube, and it's and then all of a sudden it's like ban lifted, and they're like, no, fuck. It's like, so we're gonna deal it. But yeah, man, it's I have fun doing what we're all doing on here, and like I said, when I was with DEC, I think it's just awesome that we all have this this platform to do what we're doing, and that's all because of Kirk, really.
Right.
Yeah, and I've listened back to even old episodes when the YouTube channel first was launched, and the way he always described it was like kind of a content playground for Minifans, and it's cool to see like from what it started as, obviously just Mike and the Minifans, great thinkers, and what it's grown into, where there's so many shows going on now, ranging KMS Bruise Guys to what you and Tony are doing, to this show, to Mintel Intel. Like, it's a broad spectrum of shows, and I'm grateful for it. It's fun. It's been fun to do, and I love watching the content on the YouTube.
Yeah, I think I think Kirk's found a good balance of not like, there was a time where I appreciate it because I love the YouTube and I love the drama it creates. And there was a time where people were criticizing that he was leaning too much into it, and it was like every other day he was bringing up YouTube drama. I think he's found a good balance of when there's something that people are talking about it, he'll talk about it, but otherwise he just lets it go. If something pops into his head that he heard on the YouTube, he'll bring it up briefly and then they'll move on. So yeah, I think they've struck a good balance. I'm glad the ban has been lifted. Excited to see what happens to Steve if he hopefully has a punishment that at least provides some content. What do you guys think about bringing in guests into the show? So like Carabas is coming in next week. Like VD, I know you're not a baseball guy because you're not a thinking man sport, which is why Gig and I are big baseball guys. Are you excited for the Saugus Rocket coming in on Tuesday?
Yeah, I like Carabas. I don't think they're going to talk much baseball, so I don't really know how that fun fact was relevant.
Just trying to get a joke. But you're
I'm taking your job. I'm stepping all over it. But yeah, I like Carabas. I like when they have people in for a day or two. Like, they don't do it very often, so it seems like a kind of a fun change up. That's a baseball joke for you. Ooh, anytime they do. But yeah, I think Carabas, he'll probably slide right in. That's another baseball joke, and he'll be pretty good third voice for a day. It'll be interesting, and that's one thing Kirk always does. He finds a way to make anything interesting. He makes Steve and Mike interesting, so he'll make Carabas. It'll be fun with Carabas. It'll be cool.
Well, Carabas was having some issues the last time that they were all together.
That's true.
Down at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So they might have some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, that's true.
Carabas was certainly going through some of his own things, so I wouldn't be surprised if that probably comes up.
Yeah, I hope they take calls too, because I think it would be funny to hear someone new's response to like the crazy callers or just like the terrible callers, and see how they react. That was something I wanted to mention that's also missing with Mike not being there. As a caller who often has a joke that doesn't land in the beginning, it's always nice because Mike always laughs at the joke, even if it's bad in the beginning, and it gives you a nice little boost of confidence. Yeah. I noticed a couple of callers this week that got flustered because their first joke or their first comment didn't land because Mike wasn't there to fill it with the laughter. So that was the little thing that I noticed that Mike's being missed on.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that, and it's tough because right around, Mike's leaving right around the time the Abortion Fridays and Turd Tuesdays are launched. So it's tough times to be a caller. You got to be sharp. You got to have your layers ready. If you need advice, DM Ziggy, because he's the self-proclaimed best caller to the show. He says it all the time. He says that all the time.
Wow.
Absolutely not. Those are lies.
I happen to laugh my ass off when those guys have the restraint to not react to the first joke.
Yeah.
And it's just that brutal seconds of silence. And that caller's like, fuck.
Yeah. It is not a good feeling.
There's some of my favorite calls, though. The calls that fall flat are some of my favorite calls.
There's so much pity on them.
Especially the people that just hang up in the middle. Like, they start a bit, they get their one line out, and then they get no love back, and they're just out of there. I love that. Those are some of my favorite calls.
Steve's timing with the flush is getting considerably better too. It
Yeah.
really like it's starting to hit.
Kirk's giving him the nod.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
yeah,
true.
Steve.
That's true too. That's
Every
true.
now and then you can tell Steve pulls one when Kirk, wasn't
Which
calling
is
for
funny.
it. He's spot on. He's spot on.
By the way, I only brought up Carabas because I wanted to get to Kirk's comment about bringing in Steve Peralt to throw him off the top of the building.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah,
that was funny.
I think it'll be interesting. Like, it'd be nice if what are the chances? That'd be pretty cool. Like, maybe they could do like a call in with like Big Cat or maybe KFC or someone like that. Or I don't know.
I think Carabas is going to be fun on the show too, because he is like, I think out of all the people at Barstool, he understands Kirk well and his humor and like kind of how to deal with him. And Zig, that's a great point. He said it would be so funny to have callers talking to him. It would be great.
Oh, they're just going to be shitting all over the Red Sox, sucking on it. Carabas, you fucking bomb the sock. And
Carabas is good at like the fake wrestling character, so I think he'd play along well with that.
Yeah.
I think Carabas should be good. Again, I think we'll be criticized because we're giving him too much praise, but I think just bringing in different people, not like every day, but maybe once a week, would just be fun. I don't know. It's hard because you don't know if Mike's coming back, so it's not like, all right, we just gotta wait a month. There's just, you don't know, so it'll be interesting to see how they take the show and what direction Kirk goes with, if he mixes it up week to week or episode to episode or what.
Agreed.
I don't think they need to do it. Honestly, I don't think they need to do it. Would it be entertaining here or there? Like, yeah, sure. I don't think it's necessary.
One point I did want to get back to, Ziggy, I forgot in the moment, but you were mentioning how Kirk has found a good balance about talking about the YouTube too much versus too little. And I was a listener to the show for a long time with no Twitter and not really watching the YouTube content. And I still found it hilarious every time like Kirk would go on a rant about like Menners. So people saying that it hurts the show when he talks about too much YouTube stuff, like, I don't necessarily agree with it. Because I'm on the inside of the show, I don't care if it gets too inside. Like that, it's not a criticism that makes sense from my perspective, and I don't really care about other people's perspective on like whether they enjoy the show too much. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that even when I was not on Twitter, not on YouTube, like I still loved the Minifan stuff, even though I had no idea who the people were. I'd never interacted with them, but I guess it did eventually lead to me getting on Twitter. So, we can get into random notes now. There's a couple things I wanted to bring up. I think I need to go back and count, but I think Steve said the words dynamically inserted ads like 5 or 6 times. So he's definitely read an article sometime recently, some business article about, podcasting or radio. And that's a buzzword for Big Steve right now, dynamically inserted ads. And then today we got the backdoor astronaut, which was unbelievable. Gig absolutely made one of the best memes he's made in a long time. And just, if at the beginning of the week, I could have told you we're going to get a story about Big Steve wanting to be the backdoor astronaut as a young child, like, I don't know if it would surprise me at that point. That's just why this show is so great. But like you were saying earlier, Gig, I can just imagine like a young Steve Robinson at space camp. He definitely was a kid with a big head when he was young too.
With
like, his type.
Fishbowl on his head.
So just like being a know-it-all in his group, just, looking down upon people dumber than him. Just all the reasons I love Big Steve.
So here's what I want.
Go ahead, Zig.
Well, I was going to say, here's what I want to know. Was this whole master plan of Steve to infiltrate NASA, was that concocted when he was like 10 or when he was like applying to college at age 17? Because that seemed to be the plan up until when he applied to MIT, but it also seems like the plan of a 4th grader. So I'm just curious.
I think it was young Big Steve. If there's one thing I know about Steve, it's like by the time he was 17, he was thinking about his retirement plan and like way on. He looks forward in life. So this seems like the dream of like a 10-year-old Big Steve to me.
Yeah, 10-year-old Big Steve was dreaming about MIT.
That's true.
Exactly.
But the dream,
exactly.
my point is that dream was still there. The dream was still there when he applied to MIT when he was like a junior.
The dream is
senior.
still there now. It's not out of the possibility right now. You can see when he talks about it. He still has that little twinkle in his eye.
Yes, and this is definitely not this was not a fable, a notorious Robinson fable. He knows so much about the space station, about space, about how they exercise by using treadmills and resistance bands so that they can avoid atrophy of the muscles. Like for someone who tries to sniff out the lies, I can confirm this was not a lie. Absolute truth from Steve.
He nailed the time that it takes the sunlight to reach.
8 seconds.
Yeah,
or 8
he
minutes.
nailed it. I was like, "Get the fuck out of here!" And
I saw you tweet that, and I thought I hadn't gotten there, and I was like, "Oh, he must be trying to expose him." And nope, sure enough,
me too.
Nailed
I had
it.
the same reaction. I was about to get mad at Gig. Don't fact check Steve, but yeah, he nailed it.
Yeah, that was. I will give Steve credit. That was a very funny segment. He had a couple funny lines, like how Mike would bankrupt the country because each excess pound of weight costs $50,000 of fuel. And then Kirk asked him, like, "You really think you could last a year up there?" He's like, "Yeah, well, there's vital scientific research that needs to be done."
yeah.
I liked how Steve's like, I'm fucking Bruce Willis, and Kirk's like, no, you're not. You're fucking Ed Harris.
Yeah.
You're the guy down. It's like, and that's all I could think about. It's like Steve's like, well, the engineer has to be there to like teach these guys how to fix things. And all I could think about is that scene in Apollo 13 where they're like, we're gonna make this contraption. All I could see was Steve.
That's
doing
his
that.
dream. That's his dream.
And he also called him Ron Howard's brother.
Yeah, Clint Howard. Yeah.
They did speculate as to whether each of them would like space. Steve, I think he would obviously love being in space as long as it was mission based. He's not going up there just to hang out. But I think Blind Mike would be great on the space station. I figure if you're blind, being able to float around and not trip on everything would probably be an advantage. Kind of feel your way around.
The same reason you said he'd be good in prison, or he would do.
I've made the same argument from why I think Blind Mike would enjoy jail. It's just a lot of hanging out, hanging with the fellas up there. But I just did love Steve saying he would only go up there if it was mission based, if he had something to accomplish. This just shows the kind of go getter he is.
Well, he's a go getter, but at the same time, he seemed to have given up the dream when he got denied from MIT. If he really wanted this to achieve this dream, he'd be still fighting for it. Although I know you're going to say, how do we know he's not fighting for it behind the scenes, in the shadows, if you will?
No,
I think I just knocked myself into a pretzel there.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, a little bit of administrative corruption held him back. He showed proof of that today. So, because he knows people like you, Ziggy, are sniffing down his tail, looking for his lies, which do not exist. But I think probably later in life he'll get to aerospace engineering. Right now he's doing the podcast thing.
I just like the visual of Blind Mike floating around a space station with all kinds of empty hang containers and like astronaut ice cream wrappers. Oh, the place is a fucking dump.
Yeah, his white beat off sheet floating around the crusty shop.
It's like
a mic in the minifans from space. If he's just floating around with a mic, I think that would do big ratings. So we should see if we can get him up there. I think he'd enjoy it.
So here's the question I would ask: is when do you? So you're telling me that Kirk Minahan can get in the minifans? We can get horse and buggied into the drive-in movie theater, or I can maybe even for the start of the show be horse and buggied in by an Amish family.
Oh, I'd have to find out about that.
Is he going to have to give up his cell phone? Can he have a piece of technology in his pocket?
Do I have to have one of those beards? I don't want one of those beards.
Oh, absolutely. They'll be happy. They'll actually probably ask you to make phone calls for them.
Yeah, the Amish people, man, they
play fast and loose.
Yeah,
they're not like the Mennonites.
No, I've seen them in like grocery stores and stuff. Some of them are shaky. That's all I'm gonna say. So
disparage the Amish people right before we're looking for their support.
That's a good point. So Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. So you're saying the Amish will be? We can maybe convert them into minifans.
Oh, I think there's a few of them we can. Yeah.
Do you think
I'm intrigued by this? The Amish always intrigue me.
Do you think that Mike would have an easier go of being Amish?
Maybe.
He wouldn't have to deal with technology.
I don't know.
They might shame him. You gotta work though.
Get out there in those fields.
Yeah, Amish people work, man. They work. Mike's
although
attitude.
that would be we could record that. That would be fun to watch.
I mean, you know
see
what?
him
You know
walking
what?
around.
Yeah, you've intrigued me.
Another thing we got into this week, which again, if at the beginning of the week you told me we'd be discussing the relationship between Minifans and Amish people, I think I would be shocked, even though the show is crazy. But I've been visualizing that live show all day because I was born in Pennsylvania, kind of in that area, not as rural. So I have experience with the Amish people. And just that mashup of Minifans in an Amish town, it would be pure gold. And I will, if it happens, I will 100% be there, no matter the time. That is something I can't miss. I don't gig you again. Somehow your second best meme of the day was that Amish meme. That was hilarious.
I used to live down in Maryland, and so the Amish they're right in Maryland as well. And we'd go to the Amish market, and it's like, dude, the Amish ladies can bake like hell wouldn't have it. But they might be the most frightening people known to man, because you want to go up and riff with them, be like, hey, well, how you doing today? And they just mean mug you. Yeah. They're like, buy this apple pie, you tubby fuck, and move along. Yeah. And you're like, okay, see you later. You're but I was having the same thing. Like, I was thinking the same thing, VD. Like, everyone's sitting on like bales of hay, like in a barn, and it's just like I could see it in my head. I think it would be amazing, like sitting there, and
I can see like LK replacing intern Will, just finding some new Amish kid that wants to run away from his family and just be LK's best friend. Maybe take him on a road trip. There's stories that would come out of that weekend for sure.
Yeah, I think we could have our own Amish show here, because my grandparents lived in Amish country in Ohio. So I have some experience there too. Steve Kirk did not have a good grasp of the Amish community, because like they were saying that the Minifans would convert the Amish. It would definitely be the other way around. Like Steve said that the Minifans said we should send a letter to the Amish and tell them to keep their kids close. If you've ever seen an Amish kid, that is like the most terrifying thing. They're cutting down hay with the scythe at like age 6. Their stare will look like directly into your soul with their bowl cut.
Big starers.
They're terrifying.
Big starers.
Freak strength.
Yes,
freak
absolutely.
strength. Yeah.
And that's why I think if we went, or when we go, hopefully, I'm a little afraid that some of the Minifans will stay there. Like Justin, he already has the beard. Definitely would fit in with that culture. I mean, Warthog's a no-brainer. Mrs. Warthog, she can. I'm sure she's got the stare down already. She's got the mean mug. So I'm sure we will leave some people behind in Amish country. And I will say, when I heard Pennsylvania Amish, usually like Lancaster County is like the Amish capital of the world, but Lancaster County is very touristy, and it's kind of like the OG Amish look down upon them, because you're not supposed to like make a profit off of their Amishness. But I looked it up, and this Lewisburg is not in Lancaster County. It's like they're real Amish there. So so it's legit. It's not touristy. You're not even supposed to like take a picture of the real Amish, because
those are like Mennonites. That's what. Right. Those are the Mennonites. They're not. They drive every now and then.
Right. Yeah. They're the loosey goosey ones.
I do think. I think your point about Justin is great. He seems like he might be a kid that escaped from an Amish community at some point, because the Amish are the only people that can sell a joke better than Justin, and I don't think that's natural. I think that's a learned behavior. So my eyes on Justin. He may be an escaped Amish kid.
It's funny. It's funny because Tony's been up on vacation up in northern Maine, and I don't know when this happened, but we have quite the Amish contingency up in northern Maine now, and it makes sense. I mean, there's nothing up there; no one mess with them. So his family bought a shed from the Amish. He goes, no doubt, like 7 Amish dudes rolled in the morning, had this shed up within like an hour and a half, and it's the most sturdy built structure known to man. And I was like, I fucking love it, dude. I just love that shit.
They're all business. They are,
man.
And
they are.
I'll tell you, one community that's thriving in this time of turmoil and pandemic is the Amish. They don't know what's going on, I bet. They're very insulated, doing their thing. And I think a union with the Minifans would be classic.
Yes, has to happen.
Or tragic. Either or.
Both can be true.
So back to the random notes. It was nice to get the camera on Steve.
But
I did notice the strategic play of Steve to make his face much smaller, so that Warden of the North's gifts would be a little lower quality. because otherwise I don't know why it's not the side by side. But it was nice to have that because we can get Steve's goofy ass.
He knows Kirk is the star. He's a humble guy. He's gonna make his smaller. It has nothing to do with hiding from the warden.
So he thinks when Mike's in studio, Mike and Kirk are on the same level.
Well, he's a humble guy, and you know he's trying to support Mike in any way he can. We've seen it this week, time and time again.
Sure.
You know,
I've got a bone. I've got a bone to pick with Steve. I don't know if you're done, Ziggy. Yeah. So he took it easy on Chelsea Handler. All right. And
yes, I wanted to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't necessarily look, you will randomly see, and it's so incredibly random to see a Confederate flag here and there. All right. But that's not even my thing. I don't even care. Yeah. Chelsea, she said there's many, and she's full of shit, especially wherever she stayed. She probably stayed somewhere affluent, like Agunquit or Kennebunkport or Bar Harbor, and you're really not going to see anything around there. But what really irritated me that Steve probably didn't see is that she is part of what's called Demcast Focus 14, which is like they're focusing on 14 different states where they're trying to swap the Senate seat. So our state's one. She's trying to get rid of Susan Collins, and she is the captain of Maine. Okay. So she's doing nothing but, like, if you look at her Twitter timeline, retweeting like all this stuff, like we got to get Susan Collins out, we got to vote in Sarah Gideon, and nothing drives me more batshit crazy than a rich person from California, no offense, VD,
none taken,
3,000 miles across the fucking country in Maine trying to influence a state election. That shit, I'm like, lady, we don't need your shit. Get the fuck out of here. It's like, so I don't think Steve necessarily saw all that stuff because he kind of just touched upon it real quick. And he's like, yeah, whatever. You see him every now and then. You see him on fishing boats every now and then. It's not like this big of a deal. She made it seem like it was a lot larger of a deal than it is because it was fit the narrative and it's politically motivated.
Yeah.
And I don't think he dug down deep enough to see. Like,
that's interesting. That stuff is normally right up Steve's lane, so I'm surprised that kind of got by him.
Did he drop the ball on that one, VD, or do you think?
I mean, he's doing the job. He's doing Mike's job too right now. He's doing two jobs.
Or maybe like Steve's like, man, we've beat a dead horse, like celebrities talking down to the common man. But my thing is like, Chelsea, fucking VD, you can attest to this. It's like, look, there's plenty of shit that she could be doing in California. I mean, homelessness. Yeah. Like everyone, these guys are supposed to like shut your air conditioners off at some specific time now. Like, I was like, she lives in 11.
Burning. Our city is burning currently.
Here's the big ball buster out of this whole fucking thing. So you read her thread, and you have all these idiots that are there like, well, I was going to go visit Maine, but now I'm not going to because there's all these, Confederate flag toting Mainers, racist Mainers everywhere. And if she knew anything about the state of Maine, she'd understand that we're a poor state that relies heavily on tourism. So you're fucking us there, Chelsea. Thanks a lot. So I don't know. I really felt like he could have really gone in on it.
Yeah, I was surprised. Yeah, I was surprised. We did get to segue a nice hearty rant against Skip Bayless. That was raw from Kirk. I mean, he didn't even want to discuss it at first because it was so upsetting to him. But I think he just tore him apart. And he didn't. What was nice was he didn't just listen to the 1 minute soundbite. He listened to the whole thing, ripped it apart segment by segment. I kind of figured Skip Bayless would backtrack today, but I don't know if you heard. But he basically went on and he almost doubled down and said like his comments were taken out of context. So hopefully Kirk kind of goes back to them again on Monday. But the one thing I want to bring up is I saw like Barstool was promoting Scott Van Pelt had a similar, not quite a rant, but he addressed it. And Barstool was promoting that on the Twitter page. It would have been nice if they promoted Kirk's segment on it because I honestly thought it was something that could have gone viral because he was speaking so much truth. Coming from personal experience, but also just like logically breaking down why it was such a trash argument from Skip Bayless, who's like clearly a troll, but he doubled down today. So I guess he believes it, which is pretty reprehensible.
Yeah. I mean, Kirk's perspective on that obviously would be interesting. It probably would be a smart move for for Barstool to promote it. You know, the king of the crazies giving his take on it. But that is one moment where I'll say I'm happy Mike was not in the studio, because Kirk kind of just got to go off. And, you know, every now and then Mike in those situations will, you know, jump in when Kirk's on a roll or something. And Kirk's usually pretty good about just telling him to shut up for a second. But that was nice. Just kind of even Steve stepped back and just let Kirk do his thing.
I was curious about Skip Bayless. Like, so I looked up because, you know, there's obviously a correlation with CTE and depression. All right. Well, you know, like I was like, I wanted to go back in time a little bit and see what he had to say about Junior Seau or some of these other guys that have been suicidal because of depression. So I went back and I saw him and Shannon Sharp talking about Aaron Hernandez, and I was like, I'm going to get you, sucker. If you're going to, you know, if you're going to be like, oh, CT. Nope. He pretty much goes, Aaron Hernandez was an asshole, and I got a doctor friend who says CTE and concussions have nothing to do with each other. And I was like, oh, okay, there you go. Yeah. Skip Bayless is just a fucking prick. And that's, you know, I thought that I was going to catch him in something. Nope. He's just an asshole. He's one of those. He'd probably be great buddies with like Jerry Callahan. You know,
yes, that's a good call.
He'd be like,
they have a lot of similarities actually.
Fucking tough guys, you know. And it's, you're full
Botox, fake hair, hair dye. Yeah,
I'm like, I'm all for like the, you know, I saw a lot of the narrative on Twitter where it's like, oh, if you're believing what he says, then you're dumb because he's just a troll. Like I saw a lot of that narrative out there, and I'm all for the, you know, dumb sports hot take shows formats, like whatever they're interesting, but there is like a line where you. Like he can have that pointless, stupid show talking about nothing without like kind of condemning talking about mental illness. And it was good to see like pretty much everybody else. I saw Stephen A. Smith had a good piece on it. And, you know, in a way it has worked in the advantage because so many people have just been like, wow, this guy's an idiot. And it has spurred the conversation. I'm surprised he didn't try to like take that spin zone, but we'll see. He just seems like an asshole. There's not really much more to it.
No, there isn't. Like I figured, like I'd be able to get him in a little bit of a gotcha, but no, he's just a fucking
consistent.
asshole.
He's consistent. Yeah,
at least he's consistent.
He leans into the Cowboys fan character.
Yeah.
And he started off. He's like, I've got hundreds of friends that play in the NFL, and you know, or that they played in college. Right. You know, and he's like Judge Smales in fucking Caddyshack. Yeah. Like, okay, fucking piss off, Skip, you fucking dick.
Speaking of assholes and dicks, we should discuss Steve from Providence and the role he played in this week. We addressed the YouTube ban earlier. We didn't even talk too much about what caused it. So Ziggy, do you want to give us just a little background of your understanding of the timeline of how this went down?
Not really, but I will. I'll do my best.
I mean, it's very simple. I can do it if you want.
Yes, please do it. I don't want to get in trouble.
Before Sacco, allegedly, or I guess Kirk said he jumped in the Minifan, one of the Minifan chats, and I guess was talking to them and made it known that Mike would have to do stand up. And Steve from Providence from there went and kind of gave Mike a warning. That warning served no purpose because Mike was still wildly unprepared. And so that did tick Kirk off a little bit this week. Given that you're in that situation, Ziggy, would you tip off Mike?
Honestly, I probably would because the reason that Steve did it, or at least that they speculated Steve did it, was because he was being a nice guy. And I probably would have done the same because I'm a nice guy. Like I'm overly nice. Probably the nicest guy on earth and the most humble guy on earth.
Steve Robinson would have something to say about that statement.
I probably would have done it, but so I don't blame Steve, but I absolutely get why Kirk was so mad because, like Kirk said, he was playing, like Steve was playing God with the show. And Kirk has a vision for like even the smallest parts of the show. And if anyone gets in the way of that, then they should be cast down like the sodomites. And that's what happened. I was disappointed I'm disappointed they flushed Steve when he called in on Wednesday, because he at the time he didn't know why. He saw the tweet, he didn't know why they were mad. So it would have been funny to get his live reaction to it. And that he honestly probably would have dug himself into a deeper hole.
Definitely.
But Gig, do you think he deserves punishment? Do you think what do you think is going to happen from this?
You know, it's like here's the thing. It's like, I don't know if you guys watch the OGs or not, but Steve said, he's like, look, I didn't fucking know when I called in that he'd been talking about prescription meds and how much you need to take in order to kill yourself, or else I wouldn't have fucking, Steve's a fucking killer, dude. He's a fucking Marine. This is what he does. He gives people shit. And honestly, like, his whole tune would have changed differently had he known the context of what was really going on in that studio. So, I think Steve's a big boy. He'll get his pee-pee slapped a little bit and fucking he'll be all right. I don't think he's gonna like do a ban or any of that stuff.
No, I think there is a road to redemption for Steve. I don't think it'll be a long one, but I'm sure, knowing Kirk, they'll come up with something creative. It looks like they're trying to leave it to Steve to do on his own, but that doesn't seem to be his best skill. I am happy the OG show was back this week. It was good to see. Steve from Providence is just such a ridiculous human being, talking about how he basically killed his dad from getting him a snail salad. Just the more you peel back the layers on that guy, just the more interesting it gets. So
I'm like, you're not gonna really. It's hard to hurt a guy that's videotaped porn essentially with a skid pig and ate a tuna fish sandwich at the fucking same time. It's hard to fuck with a guy like that, know? So what do you do?
I know I've said in the past that I think Steve will have a full-time role on the show. I think if Mike comes back and there's still legitimate beef with Steve, that even goes more in the favor of my argument, because Kirk loves tension, and if there's actual tension between Mike and Steve, I could see him bringing Steve in, even if it's just once a week, just to have that tension in the room of Mike kind of just being on edge, and that's definitely something I could see Kirk being conniving about.
I'd imagine that those two have already, like, Steve has already.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Bro, I'm fucking sorry. I had no idea. Yeah. Like, shit is where it is. I'm sure that's probably already taken place.
Yeah, I mean, like Kirk said, that's Steve's job, is to be an asshole. And Mike was, understandably rattled in the moment. But I think that's something you come out of the other side of a few weeks of, like, therapy and blind camp. And I think, that's the reason you go to a place like that, is to kind of learn how to deal with that stuff. I think Mike would obviously. I think that they'll put this behind them pretty quickly.
Leave it to the Minifans, though, to have a fucking fake election, and someone has a complete and total fucking
mental breakdown. Yeah, a blind guy versus a guy in a wheelchair, and it ends in one of them going away to an institution.
Which reminds me, Gig. When I was doing a little research on Lewisburg today, I found a picture of an Amish guy pushing another Amish guy in a wheelchair, which I need to send you. You can go to work with that.
Is that sucker hand built? I hope so.
It actually wasn't. Nice. It was metal, so that's a little disappointing. It was a bad week though for Andy Mayo, because more confirmation that the Minifan private chat gets inside information. We know how much he's been dying to get into that Minifan thread. So just a bad week for Mayo there.
It was kind of he is one of your cronies, Ziggy. Is he not? No. But it was sad to see him like call in and kind of be a hot shot one day and then call back the next day and try to go under the radar and just ask like a dumb question. That for me was a little sad to see.
That was a perfect flush right there.
Yes.
I'm trying to be nice. No.
Yeah.
No,
go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say Mayo's call on Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever, was probably my favorite call ever, because it led to this: Mayo asking Steve why Steve said my first name, and Steve's response, because he's pretending to be my dog. He's dishonoring. He got cut off at dishonoring, but I'm sure he was going to say he's dishonoring Ziggy. So just as a reminder, Steve got so mad at me because I'm pretending to be his dog and dishonoring his dog. So I just wanted that. Thank you, Mayo, for getting that audio there. I've been listening to it every day, multiple times a day, just to remind myself how much I own Steve and how much real estate I have.
No, you're dishonoring Steve's dog. You've bundled multiple investigations. You can ask Warden about Condiment Gate. You're coming up short, and Steve knows that, anyone in his bloodline, even if it's his dog, is just going to deliver on those kind of investigations. So I think that's the way you're kind of dishonoring him, in my opinion.
Good spin zone there.
Not a spin zone, just a fact. That's really all I had on this week. You guys have any other final random notes before we wrap this thing up and call it a day?
I had two things. One, I did like Steve calling one of the Globe writers a smarmy-looking pajama boy. That made me laugh. And then I also had to give a quick shout out to Harry Minahan. Big week. He lost his first tooth, and he has his first communion this Sunday. So shout out Harry Minahan.
Big week.
Yeah, I just want to I think the Trump call was hilarious. And in particular, he said, Mike, how is it possible that you're just realizing you're blind right now? I thought that was a great line. And I thought the Trump call was was great, especially in this week of calls were kind of for the most part.
I agree. It's because no mic, no laugh track.
Yeah, it could be.
It's messing with your mind.
All right, folks. Well, Gig, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Watch Better Than It Used to Be, the most dynamic and entertaining and hardworking show on the YouTube channel. Ziggy, thank you for waking up every morning as a marble mouth moron and just doing what you do, overcoming those obstacles. So keep fighting that fight, Zig.
You're right. Hey, real quick, before while we're on the topic of YouTube, I just saw Kingpin Pete has a new gambling show on the YouTube now. Check it out. It looks fire. It looks he's wearing a baklava, it looks like. To cover his identity. So check it out.
Antifa gambles.
All right, that's all we got for the rundown this week. We'll be back next week. I hate hosting. I hope Red's here and I never have to do it again. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Gig.
Thanks, boys.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. President. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mikey. We all love you. It's okay. I was just kidding. Those 25 times I called you bad and low talented, and that you had no initiative because you never read a book or listened to Bruce Springsteen the entire time you worked for Kirk.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
President.
just kidding, Mike. You're blind and you're fat.
I'm glad you haven't changed.
Mikey, I have a
sir.
question for you.
Yes, sir.
How long is the bus that they'll be picking you up in? Is it longer than
It's more of a
15
flatbread
feet? It's okay. Barron
flatbread
goes
truck.
to school in one too. It's all right, Mikey. Not my best. It's okay.
I liked it, sir. Go ahead.
All right.
Not so little, Mike. I have a question for you.
Go for it.
How is it possible that you're just realizing you're blind right now? That's not good, Mike.
That's
You're getting out of the issue.
That's kind of, Mr. President, sort of the thing
Again-
I said to him yesterday. It would be like, what I said to him yesterday was, it would be like me going to a program because my fingernails keep growing. Like, you should know this by now.
Right.
But I guess
Well,
it's different.
I have a theory.
Well, if
I
you
have
look-
a theory. I'm a very stable genius. Mike,
Sure.
Please.
tell me if you've experienced any of these symptoms. Do you ever experience fatigue?
Not really.
You're not going along with
Yeah,
it.
you're supposed to
yes.
say yes.
How about
I mean, really. Say yes. Go ahead.
Yes, I do, actually, as a matter of fact.
Thank you.
How about blurred vision,
Oh, certainly.
swollen feet? You see where I'm going?
I guess
I
so.
see where it's
Yeah,
going.
diabetic blindness.
Huh?
Yeah.
Getting worse. You're
Yeah.
diabetes.
Yeah. I think that's
Right.
part of it, too.
That's good stuff.
I'm sure the center you're
on the
going to
bright
will
side.
be able to tell you about like an insulin pump or something, right?
That's true.
Certainly. I'm sure they know a lot about
I'll have
that.
to show him how to use it, of course. and
Right.
Yes, and how to feed himself, as Steve said before.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. President.
Very good. You know what really helps diabetic blindness is hydroxychloroquine. Very good, Mikey.
Start
Oh,
drinking.
wow. I didn't know that.
Thank you. That's good advice, Mr. President.
Mikey, look, I'm going to leave you with this because I know you need some good news. The more blind you get, the less you'll be able to see your credit score and your reflection.
That's true.
Well, he closed with his best.
Thank you, sir.